Hello, everyone. Am I unmuted? I am unmuted. Thank goodness. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about motherhood and the Music Academy, perspectives of early, mid, and late career faculty. My name is Bridget Sweet, and I am Associate Professor of Music Education at the University of Illinois. My colleague, and I'm a mother of two, and my colleague Kate Fitzpatrick is Associate Professor at the University of Michigan and also a mother of two.
The issue of motherhood in the academy is one that has actually received quite a bit of attention within the research literature. In recent years, women received 47% of PhDs awarded, but comprised only 35% of tenured or tenure-track faculty. Perhaps more striking, just 26% of full professors are women. As more women enter higher education as doctoral students and as faculty, universities are being challenged to rethink policies and practices in order to ensure a more equitable environment for family and academic life. Family formation adversely and disproportionately affects women's academic careers, with women with young children less likely than men or other women to achieve tenure, and more likely to experience discrimination on the basis of their family status. Women with children also report higher levels of occupational stress, as gendered expectations leave women to experience heavier workloads within an often non-supportive organizational climate. Although parenthood for both men and women is important to discuss, there are some gendered assumptions that make motherhood in academia especially important to examine. For example, although all working parents surely struggle with attempts to balance parenting and work responsibilities, quote, researchers agree that married women who work outside of the home experience far greater conflicts between work and family roles than their male counterparts. That's from Brown, 2010, unquote. Indeed, Shine found that the burden of home and parenting responsibilities typically falls on female parents regardless of the extent of their career or family earnings.
Different perceptions of the capabilities of male and female parents are substantiated by Carell, Bernard, and Pike, 2007, who found that reviews of application files differed according to gender and parenting status. Having male parent status was seen by employers as being an indicator of responsibility, while female parents with the same qualifications were perceived as less competent and were recommended for lower starting salaries. Is academia more punishing for mothers than other professions? According to census data, among university faculty members, physicians, lawyers, and chief executives between the ages of 35 and 50, women in academia reported fewer children than women in all other professional fields. Among female faculty members who worked between 50 and 59 hours a week, 41% reported children in the household, compared with a robust 67% for female doctors. Women in the academy are also more likely to remain single for the purpose of achieving career status. We have citations for all of these if anyone would like them. Compared to her childless counterparts, a woman with a child under 6 is 22% less likely to obtain a tenure-track position. This is related to the age of the children. Mothers with older children do not appear to suffer this penalty, nor do women without children. Within the field of music education, such equity issues may be even more profound, given the often gendered stereotypes and expectations associated with particular fields, levels, and specializations of music teaching.
There's a growing body of scholarly literature examining the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on gender equity within academic spaces, and particularly for women mothers who engage with research. The reduced availability of childcare and the closure of schools during the pandemic has forced parents to work while simultaneously remote schooling and providing childcare for women in their home, for children in their home. Researchers expected that the COVID-19 pandemic would exacerbate existing inequities due to the exaggerated disparities related to home responsibilities borne by working parents according to gender, and this has indeed proved to be the case. Emerging literature suggests that not only have research submissions to leading journals by women trended downwards during the pandemic, but during the same time, submissions by male authors actually increased. Myers, Tam, Yin, and al. suggest that the variable of having multiple children, especially young children, was associated with the largest decline in research time during the pandemic for female scholars. This is especially important to consider with regards to our study, as COVID hit during data collection, and thus we were able to discuss this issue with our participants.
According to Adele, 2013, not Adele, like Adele, but according to Adele, intersections of race and ethnicity alongside motherhood can intensify the experiences of marginalization that are felt by parenting women. In addition, we find it important to note that the studies of women who are parents that we examine focus narrowly on the experiences of cisgender, heterosexual, female-identifying parents, when surely others who do not meet those gendered assumptions experience intersectional dynamics related to parenting. Researcher Marianne Mason asks, quote, "What makes academia so difficult for mothers? In large part, it's because academia is a rigid lockstep career track that does not allow for time out and puts the greatest pressure on its aspirants in the critical early years. Most PhDs are achieved postdoctoral fellowships completed and tenure granted between ages 30 and 40. The make or break decade, as I call it, is also called the decade in which most women have children, if they have them at all." End quote.
The purpose of this study was to explore the perceptions of music professors as to their experiences navigating both the academy and motherhood. Our research questions addressed descriptions of experiences with parenting in academia, messages participants received within the academy with regards to their being parents, and strategies gained learning to navigate parenting in academia. Using a collective descriptive case study design to illuminate the phenomenon of motherhood in the music academy, we utilized purposeful sampling to select six participants, 2 of each representing early, mid, and late career music faculty who represented a diversity of university sizes and fields of specialization. And our participants include ensemble teachers, studio professors, and those within academic music fields. We did not ask the women in our study to disclose their gendered or sexual identity, but most of our participants discussed co-parenting with male spouses, and none disclosed a gender-expansive or transgender identity. Although many interesting intersections exist between adjunct and clinical tracks in motherhood, we specifically chose to examine women within tenure track or tenured positions. Data sources included 2 interviews with each participant and a focus group interview with all participants.
We found the following themes represented the experiences of our participants: living within 2 worlds, ramifications, gender equity, structure of academic institutions, and structuring family. The first theme that we'll share today, living within 2 worlds, participants inhabited 2 distinct worlds that each brought their own set of expectations, mental load, timelines, demands, and challenges that were at times unpredictable. These worlds rarely interacted, but greatly influenced one another. One thread of discussion revolved around silent parenting versus visual parenting, and Violet shared with us, "Now, what I would say to our colleagues who are secret parenting is they're robbing themselves and they're robbing the academy because they are living with a divided loyalty. And you cannot do your best in either situation because the children will feel neglected when there are times that the job pulls them away and the children don't understand." So many stories I could tell you. Discussing the navigation of motherhood and academia, Iris discussed tensions between daily schedules of the 2 worlds. There are things that administrators, colleagues, or the actual structure of the academy can influence. Scheduling meetings at 6 o'clock p.m. or 5:30 to 7:30, there's absolutely no, generally speaking, cognizance of parenthood and after-school hours. I mean, for me, I had to pay to go to faculty meetings. We asked participants what they learned thus far through this process of being in academia and being a mother. Azalea shared, "I think that depending on your faculty, depending on your relationships with people, it can also feel really lonely. For me this semester, I'm cramming as much of my day into a small space as I can so that I can get home, so that I'm not away from my baby for 12 hours every single day. So there's not really space in the day for that spontaneity of like, let's have coffee, how are you doing?" So I think if I was in a position that I was seeing somebody else at work have a baby and come back to work, I think I would know better to reach out by text, like, "I know you're really busy during the day, you probably don't have time to just sit around and chat, but I'm thinking about you."
Participants Participants discussed having to spend significant amounts of their salary to support childcare, severely impacting their financial well-being. Morning and evening events, such as concerts, required them to pay to attend. The theme of ramifications represents this particular theme. Similarly, participants struggled with the ramifications of mental health and well-being as they attended to an inordinate list of demands both at work and with their families. Azalea tells us, there's a lot of guilt about not fulfilling all the things in an ideal way. Guilt about getting takeout instead of making everything from scratch, or not having all the papers all graded, or participants discuss feelings of tremendous sadness when their work caused them to miss their children or to miss out on important events. This impacted their own emotional well-being, as Lily describes. And one of the other hard things that first year, we had a bowl game on Christmas Day. And so we thought it was going to be too disruptive to take her and my husband, so we left her. So literally, I missed her first ever Christmas. I mean, it was just surreal, right? Many of our participants discussed being one of very few women in their school or field, not to mention one of very few women parents in their field of specialization, which caused them to feel isolated at times and to lack role models. Our participants also described carrying the bulk of home responsibilities in addition to their career, and described being the person in their home who worried about planning children's birthday parties, logistics of school and activity transportation, child-related paperwork, and medical visits, which added up to an increased and gendered mental load. The theme of gender equity represents this particular theme. Iris discusses the gendered home responsibilities and exaggerated mental load that she experiences. The work never stops. I hear of husbands working too much and then they come home and then they get their stuff and they do whatever they want, and you're always scheduled. This is the bedtime, this is the supper time. When am I going to get the groceries? What am I going to forget? So again, I make lists and I delegate, and we're teaching the children to take care of some things on their own. Lily shares with us, my husband is very hands-on, and we've always just had that mindset that we would split everything. I was shocked when I had a child that even though he was very willing to be just as involved in the development of the kids as I was, there was a part of the children who actually needed me more than their dad. And that hit me upside the head, you know. All these women's rights and everything's equal. I thought, oh my gosh, there is something innate built into the relationship where at different stages of the kid's life, the mom needs to be more present, more emotionally present. We would joke about when I was at school, how I was continually thinking about the kids and wondering about their day and constantly going through my checklists and said, husband, when you go to work, are you thinking about those things? And he'd say, no, not at all. He was very compartmentalized. And I thought, oh my gosh, there are built-in differences.
In conversations with our participants, there became a clear notion of these two worlds, and one of them being the structure of academic institutions and how those intersected with their world of parenting. Part of structures of academic institutions included policy, tenures and promotion guidelines, expectations for parental leaves, service requirements, and relationships with supportive and not supportive colleagues. The structure of academic institutions is inherently unsupportive to parents. Poppy's comment speaks for itself. When I was on the faculty senate a couple of years ago, I learned that when you get reimbursed for things for travel, there's a list of things that you can be reimbursed for. One of them was sending a houseplant to the person who you stayed with as a thank you gift. So I could spend my $40 for this houseplant to send to my friends whom I stayed with for the conference. I could not get reimbursed, and I could get reimbursed for that $40. However, I could not get reimbursed for any money that I spent revolving around childcare while I was gone. Participants shared much frustration about the tenure process, including the vagueness of expectations for earning tenure. This lack of clarity fostered much anxiety about the tenure process for these mothers living within the two worlds. Lily says, I was frustrated when I went for tenure because I didn't think my university had a prescriptive enough outline of the expectations. And I know many schools have that too, where it's just this vague thing. It's this club. You're either voted in or you're voted out. How am I supposed to know if what I'm doing is enough? The other world we call structuring family. And we like to think of the structure of academic institutions as like the structure of something that exists, but structuring family is more of an active idea. And a lot of our participants talked about ways that they actively structure their family and trying to exist within these two worlds. Violet spoke of pivoting and preparing oneself to be ready for an unexpected pivot when you need to truly place your family world in priority above your academic world. And she wrote, or shared with us in our interview, I'll share something personal. 3 years ago, my husband had a brain injury. He had a stroke. I studied everything that I could on strokes. I was there. I was in the doctor's offices. I made the priority a priority. And my children rallied around, and we were the support system that he needed. But I put things on hold. That first 2 years, I wasn't traveling. I wasn't taking concerts. I was teaching my students, and I didn't burden them with the particulars. I would go in, do my job, and then I would come home. That was just my break away from my full-time work, if you know what I'm saying. Now, I've shared that because I want you to prepare. I want to prepare you just in case life takes that kind of detour. You've got to make sure that things are in place now where you can be able to pivot. The COVID-19 pandemic has struck us all incredibly hard. And as research discussed earlier indicates, this burden is especially heavy for mothers working at home. And Lily discussed this as well. There are times I specifically lower the bar during the pandemic now because short-term loss is going to be just fine. I refuse to feel guilt ever, but I'm constantly training. My kids whine and I will call it out. That expectation you have right now, you don't have that expectation for dad, do you? And we talk it through. I think women are so maternal, we do it better than men. We really do because we are attentive to others' needs. We have better perception skills. But it doesn't mean you have to just stay in that silo. We need to expect more of men because they can develop these skills or at least be aware of it. By setting clear boundaries, I said, husband, I'm feeling pressure. I feel like I've just been expected to do all this stuff. So we finally just started putting it on the calendar so the kids would know. We call it principal. Mom is principal during these hours, and during these hours, dad is principal. And we set a schedule at home and they know whatever, boo-boo, hungry, fussing. If dad's the principal, he will stop and handle it at that time.
There's so much more that we would like to discuss regarding this study, but with the remaining time that we have, we'd like to jump into implications. Looking at our findings, we've organized our implications into 3 different categories: implications and recommendations for women who, like our participants, are mothers within the academy, implications for colleagues who would like to better support women parents with whom they work, and implications for structural and institutional change that can better support women through their careers in academia. First, with mothers. For other women who may be attending this session, whether graduate students or faculty at various stages, our participants described feeling isolated or alone at many times, yet their experiences were actually very similar. So we hope that hearing the experiences of our participants reminds you that you are not alone. Many of our participants found that finding a supportive community, whether in person or within virtual spaces, helped them to advocate for themselves and find community. So a supportive network within your immediate community is important. Next, the literature is very clear regarding the ways that academic parenthood is penalized and gendered, and our study affirms these findings. We want you to know that institutions are structured in a way that is inherently unsupportive to parents, especially women. It is not just you. Next, self-care for our participants involved making wise but often difficult choices for them and their time that others likely didn't understand. Saying no to an invitation or event in your academic world, even if prestigious, often equals saying yes to your family. It is important to remind ourselves that it is actually valuable to society, that we care for and raise well-functioning and healthy children. Lastly, our participants discussed many times when they strategically needed to make their parenting silent to avoid discrimination or bias within tenure and other systems. We think it is important to remind you that decisions regarding silent parenting and visible parenting are not gender neutral. The literature confirms that men and women are perceived differently when they visibly parent. This is an unfortunate reality that needs to change, but it is real.
We also would like to share comments that we discussed during interviews and so forth with regards to colleagues. So we're hoping that in attendance today, some of you are here specifically to learn more about being a supportive colleague to parents in the academic world. The first being that scheduling is really important for academic parents. The schedule is very tight, and parents cannot adjust schedules on a dime. And as our one participant said, I'd love to go have a spontaneous cup of coffee, but then that time comes away from time that I can work, and then I get home later, and there are implications for that. So scheduling is a very important thing, whether it be school related or just for social reasons. And developing awareness as well, in the same vein, that childcare is a thing. School pickup is a thing. These children need to be picked up, dropped off. There are needs that are scheduled outside of the needs of the academic world that must be taken into consideration. Early morning or evening meetings equals money for parents to cover childcare costs. As our participant said, I had to pay to attend meetings. One of the participants that I spoke with, she and her husband paid more in childcare in a month than rent to pay for sitters and childcare so that she could interview to get a position. She's teaching now. It is okay to show support to parents. It's not something that you have to worry about talking down to someone or insulting anyone. If you just say, hey, I'm thinking about you. There's a lot going on, and I just wanted you to know that I'm thinking about you. A little support, overt support, goes a really, really long way. And parental leave is not a sabbatical nor a vacation. It was flabbergasting how many of our participants talked about when they went on parental leave, how many additional service things were added to their schedule. So even though they weren't teaching, they were added to search committees, they were added to other sorts of committees. And so the things that they needed to focus on, such as healing or supporting their spouse in healing or keeping a new baby alive, that was really pushed to the side, and the whole point of the parental leave was lost.
Finally, and I know we're out of time here, but we'd like to talk about institutions. Institutions do bear responsibility for enacting structural change that will better support women in academia. Issues of motherhood are issues of gender identity. We cannot address gender identity within the academy unless we address issues related to motherhood in the academy, especially when we consider the issues Marianne Mason raises with regard to the make or break decade, when women between the ages of 30 and 40 commonly earn their PhDs, go up for tenure, and simultaneously have children. Second, tenure and promotion expectations need to be more clearly articulated. This was repeated by all of our participants at all ranks. For women who are experiencing microaggressions and bias related to motherhood, a lack of clear expectations likely results in women fearing that they will be voted out based on their inability to attend evening concerts or socialize after faculty meetings, rather than on the substance of their work. We do not lose anything if we make tenure and promotion expectations more clear. And I think why don't we just go ahead and end there, because we're here, but there are also some financial costs associated that we also think are important to address. So thank you all, and Bridget?
And in our next 2 minutes, we'd love to open the floor and hear any comments or revelations that you've had, or if you'd like to share an experience, we'd love to hear what you have to say.
And also, since we don't have to end this session because it's a Strigg session, we can keep the commentary going into the chat, even if we transition into the next session. So that's fine.
Thank you for coming today. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Karen. Thanks, Don. Oh, there's a little one. Kay's got a little one. Yay, we had a little one in house.
We love it. Bridget and I were both expecting our children to burst in at any moment.
Oh, did you put the picture of our kids up there? To show the picture then.
I need to.
We have really enjoyed this work, and there's so much that we didn't have time to even talk about today. And while we've been working on this study, our children have been part of the process constantly, and it's just been very affirming as we mother while we analyze data and while we're preparing for NAFB conferences.
There's our kids. They'll be happy that they were part of it. Any questions?
Lots of good comments, most all congratulatory, rather than questions. But Kate and Bridget, are you able to, well, no, here we do have one. Have you seen any real meaningful change that addresses these issues?
You know what's interesting? Sorry, Bridget.
No, go ahead.
I will say it was interesting to me to hear from many of our participants, ones who perhaps were at the full ranks and were speaking about, their children were a little older, and they often said things like, I think this has gotten better. I don't think people are still dealing with the same issues. And yet I know I felt when I was reading it that, yeah, I was still dealing with the same issues. So, I think this is a time for all aspects of gender and sexuality where we've been having a real awakening within the academy. And motherhood has been a piece of that I think has been really left out. So I think it is time to bring those two things together so that we can actually make meaningful structural and institutional change. So hopefully there has been some progress, but I think that the battles are still being fought right now.
And unfortunately, one of the key reasons for doing this study is just to simply validate this as a real thing through research protocol. Like, let's get beyond anecdotal, but actually, like, follow protocol, peer review, and just, like, legitimize it in a researched way, which is sad but necessary. And hopefully these conversations and the work that we're all doing will start new ripple effects.
Well, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and also I'm so pleased that we were able to share it within the STRIG structure.
Thank you.
I understand that this session remains open, so while we do need to transition to the next presentation to make sure we can share screen and do all that sort of stuff, if you guys can hang out and respond in the chat, that'd be great, or we can just keep the chat open and let it go as it will.